On behalf of the PennWest Commission on Disabilities and Accessibility, my name is Lynn Flesher. I'm one of the co-chairs of the commission, and we welcome all of you to Let's Talk, helping students and faculty navigate conversations about mental health. This webinar was brought to you by our wonderful commission. They did a lot of work getting the speakers together, planning the questions. Thank you so much, Commission, for planning this great event for us. At this time, this webinar is being recorded for on-demand viewing. And I just a couple housekeeping measures. We just want to make sure that we're respectful of all the panelists who are speaking this evening. Wait till their thoughts are given before anybody responds. And for anyone who has questions, I will make sure as the moderator that the questions are addressed by the correct panelist. And anyone watching this webinar anywhere can ask questions in the chat function. And I, again, will make sure that the questions are taken care of by the correct panelists. So thank you again so much. At this time, I would like to go through the introductions. And first off, at the California campus site, and those are our colleagues in Eberly 130, I will start with Ikeya Craig-Swatson. She is the Community Engagement Specialist and SAFE Coordinator for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Health for Keystone, Pennsylvania. Ikeya is a wellness champion, educator, and advocate. She is the Community Engagement Specialist and SAFE Coordinator at NAMI Keystone. In her roles, she has the privilege of leading mental health initiatives for youth and young adults, while also coordinating SAFE, Suicide Awareness for Everyone, the Suicide Prevention Task Force of Allegheny County, having conversations and creating spaces that inspire healing. Inner prosperity and community work is her life. So thank you so much, Ikeya, for being with us this evening. If you want to give a wave. Thank you. Thank you. Also at our California site, we have our faculty representative for this evening, which is Dr. Rebecca Regeth. Rebecca is a professor in the Department of Psychology, Counseling, and Art Therapy. She teaches psychology classes and specializes in research methods and statistics. One of her favorite activities is being an advisor to the Psychology Club. She also enjoys collaborating with students on research projects. She has studied wellness in college students, geocaching as it relates to mental and physical health, and the effects of COVID on student learning and mental health. Welcome, Rebecca, if you want to give a wave. Thank you. And also at the California site, we have the director of the Office for Students with Disabilities, Dr. John Masella. Hi, John. And we also have Frank Valente. He is my co-chair for the PennWest Commission, and he is a licensed professional counselor for PennWest California Counseling Center. Welcome. At this point, we're going to go to introductions at the Edinboro campus, and we will start with Dr. Adrienne Dixon. Dr. Dixon is an associate professor for the counseling program, Edinboro campus, where she serves as program coordinator for the school counseling program. Dr. Dixon is also the CEO president of the Sarah A. Reed Children's Center. She has a PhD in counseling, psychology, a master's degree in counseling, and a postmaster's certificate in marital and family therapy. Welcome, Adrienne, if you want to give a wave. Thank you. And we also have with us from Edinboro, Ms. Sharon Conklin. She is the director of the Office for Students with Disabilities at Edinboro. Welcome, Sharon. At Clarion, we have our panelists this evening, and we're going to start with Dr. Brandon Packard. Brandon is an associate professor in the Department of Computing and Engineering Technology. I'm sorry if you could. There we go. Sorry about that. Dr. Brandon Packard is an associate professor in the Department of Computing and Engineering Technology, where he also serves as an assistant department chair. Brandon serves on many different committees within the department and university, such as serving on the LGBTQIA plus commission and being co-chair of the inclusion subcommittee of the University Strategic Plan Council. Welcome, Brandon. We also have Ron Regeth. He is our director for the Office for Students with Disabilities at Clarion. Welcome, Ron. At this point, I'd like to dive right into the questions for the panelists. So I'd like to introduce Ikeya again, and Ikeya, I'll start with you. I'd like, based on your experience working with adolescents and young adults, what are some things faculty and students should be aware of when beginning discussions about mental health? What empathetic wording should they use?
All right, yes. So the first thing that we do say at NAMI, so when you said empathetic wording, is that language does matter. So empathy and learning the language around empathy is very important. So for instance, a word, or typically it may be said, oh, that person is schizophrenic or is bipolar. The type of language that we promote is that person has schizophrenia or has bipolar. So when it comes to having some of those conversations and understanding empathetic language, one of the things that we must remember is identity is not attached to a person's mental health condition or even a person's mental health challenge. And so remembering the person is beyond what they may be experiencing or beyond what they may have been diagnosed with. So that's one thing to remember, is that we are working with a human being, or we're talking with a human being, and that connection is very important with empathy. Also, it's to know that two people can experience the same exact event and have two very different outcomes or two different responses or approaches to it. So when we talk about empathy, it's doing our best to learn what their perspective was or how that may have impacted them. Because sometimes it's easy to say things. I know no one on this live or no one in this room has said this before. Oh, just get over it. Or it's not that deep. Or, you know, come on. It wasn't that serious. Maybe not to you. And that's very valid that it wasn't to you. And you have the right to feel that way. However, it's important that we understand that we don't have the right to make someone else feel that way or give them that same experience. So those are two things that I would say just to start, that it's just common language that we can just learn in those moments of how to remember addressing one another, dealing with different things.
Thank you so much, Ikeya. The second question I'll address to the faculty panelists. As someone who interacts with students daily, what experiences have you had with students regarding mental health? And I'll leave it up to either the faculty members at Edinburgh, Clarion, or California who'd like to go first.
I'll go. So I teach psychology. Psychology students often have a history of mental illness, either in themselves or in their family. So they're kind of attracted to the field for that reason. So there's oftentimes situations where their mental health influences how they do in class, and it comes out in class. And so it's really important for us to be mindful of that. Usually it involves me talking to them later about it. Sometimes they just kind of fall apart in class. That's often happened.
So I can go next. I have what I like to call an open door policy, which is as long as I'm not in a meeting and I'm in my office, pretty much no matter what I'm doing, my door is open. And I have people wander in for, help with classes, help with scheduling, and then Sometimes I just have people wander in crying about one thing or another. And you think I really have any idea what to do about that? No, but I sit there and I listen and I do my best to help them and get them what they need. So I find that being willing to be there and be open to try to help makes a huge difference.
Dr. Dixon?
Yeah, I would say some of the experiences that I've had with students is that oftentimes they may experience a sense of guilt or shame, even frustration because they may not understand what they're going through and they feel guilty that they're not able maybe to perform in the way that they would typically perform, or they're fearful of being criticized because they're experiencing things that they may not understand, and feeling shame about maybe sharing that. So I think at times, being open and just being willing to hear, being able to validate people's experiences, regardless of whatever that is, and then sitting with them to talk about what might be some possible solutions. But I think oftentimes what I experience is that they are reluctant to share out of reactions, fear of reactions from other people, that they feel judged or criticized. Or in our situation, I think oftentimes that they're not performing to the level that they know that they're capable of, or the expectations people have for them.
Excellent feedback. Ikeya, any notes from what you just heard for the faculty?
I would agree, stigma is a huge part of why we don't share when we're going through something. And so normalizing those conversations, the more that we talk about it and the more that we allow that information to be accessible in our rooms or, in our classrooms, then it'll make it more easier for people to come out and talk about it.
Excellent. At this point, I'd like to turn to our Office for Students with Disabilities directors and clinical counseling faculty. What are some on-campus supports you provide specifically for students? And how may faculty get in touch with you or make appointments for support? Sharon, do you want to start in a row?
Sure. Just following up on something Adrienne said. I've been here for 28 years. I'd say in the last 4 or 5 years, we've noticed a very significant increase in students with mental health issues. The students are registering with our office, but they often don't want others to know that they in fact have a mental health disability. The other thing I'm noticing is some students are coming and talking to faculty and disclosing something that they maybe don't want our office to formally know about. So it's really been working well. And I think Mary Jo Melvin mentioned it at the last meeting that some students are actually coming to her and saying, I have accommodations through your office and I have PTSD. Or I have accommodations through your office and I have depression and anxiety. So I think we have a long way to go, but I feel like it's starting to come out a little more in the open, but I still think we have a lot of work to do.
Do you have comments about that?
Sure. So the office, it itself does provide students with the opportunity to have access to services. So within that, it really depends on the student and where their challenges or barriers lie and what we put in place as a plan for the optimal success for them at this level. In that though, we do partner a lot. Like I know like our wellness center, I partner with those folks a lot, and counseling where we refer back and forth. They might have a student that does reach out to them, but in those conversations, they realize that they disclose that they have a documented disability. So they will encourage them to reach out to our office and vice versa. I'm not a counselor, and so I need to know when it's time for me to also refer when it's beyond my expertise for the supports. So the office is, we are an office that does work well across disciplines in our campus. What's nice though for us is that I think we have a well-established relationship too with our community, where faculty can reach out to us, and oftentimes our office, when we're working through what's called that reasonable accommodation, sometimes we do need to reach out to faculty and have a conversation, because again, we cannot fundamentally alter or change the design of a program or a course. So we need to have those engaging conversations on how can we support the student and also support the faculty, and not, violate any practice in that setting. So it is more having dialogue, and it's about the process, because the underlying piece is we need to make sure we do not discriminate against our students, and making sure we have access to those services. That's what we need to do.
Excellent, Ron. And now I'll turn to the California campus. First Frank and then John. So Frank, you are a licensed professional counselor. You work at the California Counseling Center. What are your thoughts on everything we've just talked about in the last couple of minutes?
So I think my first overwhelming thought here is, hearing from the teaching faculty, right? And hearing that students are comfortable kind of expressing these concerns and expressing feelings, and like even just hearing like the open door policy and somebody shows up crying, there's trust there, right? And there's rapport there, and I think it's important to kind of recognize at base level that student feels comfortable disclosing something, right? And then so kind of figuring out, well, where do we go from here, right? And so speaking as somebody who works in the counseling office, there is no wrong reason for a student to show up and seek counseling services, right? And all these themes of whether it's identity, stigma, guilt, stress, those are things that we cover pretty much all the time in the counseling center in a one-on-one setting. Counseling is free for students that come here. It is confidential. We've had faculty members, staff members walk students down to our center and say, this person expressed something, we think they need to talk, and then we take it from there, right? And it is that confidential setting. And so if there's one thing anybody leaves with today, I just hope students can recognize like there's no wrong reason to show up. And in treatment from there looks pretty individualized. And I mean, I could spend hours talking about anxiety, PTSD, and things like that. But our services don't just stop with students, right? And that's kind of why I was so excited about this panel, because speaking for the California campus, we've had one-off experiences of faculty saying, can you come to our classroom and talk about mental health? Can you, an example that sticks out to me is working with our theater department of like, hey, our students are taking on some really heavy roles. Can you come and talk about this, right? And so we're always available and always willing to kind of help foster those discussions.
Thank you, Frank. And just to remind everyone, at Clarion, counseling services can be sought out on the second floor of Becht Hall. And Frank, if you could tell us where the counseling center is in California.
Yep, so right in Carter Hall on the first floor, it's located within the Student Health Center. So if you walk in and walk to the right, you'll run right into it.
And at Edinburgh, Sharon?
Counseling and psychological services is it McNerney? Yeah, in McNerney Hall. It's called CAPS.
Thank you so much. John Masella, if you
Yeah.
can give us some thoughts.
We're actually kind of lucky because the counseling center is right down the hall from our office. We're actually we're on the ground floor of Carter and counseling. We consider where the counseling center is the ground floor, simply because the first floor is on the back end of our building. So I don't want any students to be confused about that. Like Ron said, some of the services we provide are directly associated to the struggles that the students have. And I like to use that terminology. Earlier, Ikeya said that words are very powerful, and I've felt that way for quite a while. And so using terminology like I struggle with opposed to I can't, and helping someone even change that slight verbiage can really allow movement in some of the problems that they've been experiencing. Because it's hard to change, I can't. It's easier to change, I struggle with. And so, working with students to get to a place to even address that type of communication is something that happens throughout their experience in the counseling center, as well as when they come to the Office for Students with Disabilities. Earlier, we talked about what we're experiencing in classrooms, and I do teach in the master's program in counselor education here during the summers. And one of the things that has stood out for me is the struggle that students have with identifying that they have or have struggled with some type of diagnosis or symptomatology that would make them unable to be a therapist, because as a therapist, they shouldn't have any problems. And I love when people should all over themselves, because the idea that if I'm going to work with people and help them with their mental health, I have to be problem-free. Let me tell you something, I burned out 3 therapists in my career because I mean, doing this work is taxing. And before working in the Office for Students with Disabilities, I worked in the counseling center. And before that, I worked 30 years at Gateway Rehabilitation Center with people that struggle with alcohol and or substance use disorders, along with mental health diagnoses. And so when we work with people that have multiple problems, multiple diagnoses, and again, emphasizing some of the things with which they struggle. And when we start to pull apart and look at their symptomatology, those are the things that we like to try and address when we're looking at disability services. So we have people are able to work with some type of limitation, which they might call an impairment, and any kind of compensation or compensatory movement or a small device that they can use that keeps them from even being in a place where they're going to get a diagnosis of disability. Disability occurs when there has to be some type of additional service associated to helping that person level the playing field so far to make it equitable, that they can learn at their optimum level or ambulate at their optimum level or what have you. If we have physical barriers associated to that, which we used to have, sidewalks that didn't have ramps, no elevators in buildings and things like that, then we, the society, makes people handicapped. And that's the difference in that diagnostic criteria. We've almost eliminated the word handicap because we removed those extrinsic or external barriers. And we've gone from the home for crippled children, which we used to call a treatment facility for children, which is now referred to as Rehabilitation Institute. And so with that kind of change and that kind of growth, we see the same type of process when a person comes to Cal U or Edinburgh or Clarion. We are looking at a person that has struggled with features or symptoms, and we're trying to address their needs based on each of those. And what are they going to need in the classroom to level those off, to level that playing field?
John, that's wonderful. Thank you for those
Thank
comments.
Well,
And I'm gonna come back to Ron for a second here at Clarion specifically. And I want him, I did not forget to introduce the lady who is also sitting at our table, but I wanted Ron to do it. And so I do have a question for both. Okay. So the words that I heard was that we are not perfect either. We don't have all the answers. How do you as a student feel about that statement? And also, how do you instead of saying, I can't do this and I'm not able to do this, instead of going in and be able to say, I'm struggling with this and I want a workable solution. So I'll let you guys press those statements.
Well, first, let me introduce
Yeah.
you to this
Yes, Ben.
wonderful person to my right, probably to your left. This is Emma. She is a senior student here at Clarion who is in our Bachelor of Science in Nursing. So with that itself, we cause her a lot of stress. And she is a student that has been willing to come to my office and have great conversations. And she was very willing to talk with all of you surrounding this specific topic. So I'll turn it then over to Emma to share us some thoughts about that and just again,
Yeah, about the thoughts about us not being perfect, what your feelings and, you know, about you being able to say, I struggle with, instead of saying I'm totally lost and there's absolutely nothing, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's just that hard adjustment and then realizing that, hey, it's okay to speak up and asking for help. But then there's that barrier of like, will I have like repercussions? Will something happen that may not be the best hypothetical outcome?
Speak to a time where it was very difficult for you to, you know, explain your situation, or you may have had not the best situation happen after you brought it out,
Yes.
or a win when you brought it out, positive.
I had a win and a lose.
Okay.
The first one is my mom was diagnosed with chronic illness. And then I had a professor tell me while my mom lived. And that caused a barrier, stress, because not knowing what was going to happen. And then it also dampened the relationship because I didn't feel like I could then go to them if anything were to happen. But then the win was I had another struggle, but luckily I had faculty who noticed a change, sat me down and said, hey, please be honest with me, you are different. And then walked me down that I met Ron and all his wonderful services.
Thank you so much, Emma, for sharing. And I remind everyone who's watching this webinar, if you have questions, please put them in the chat.
one thing I just want to follow up, a lot of times too, when students do come in, it is allowing them, you know, to have that moment just to kind of be very authentic and tell us their truths. But it's also where we can reassure them, because I've been asked many times, well, if I register with you, will that show up on my transcript? Students ask that a lot. And so there is this stigma that if I identify of having a mental health or any type of diagnosed disability, that becomes now this scarlet letter, so to speak. And so it is reassuring them that things that they discuss in our offices is confidential. But I also then talk to them about what our office can do as far as services. And when we do then reach out to the faculty, if it is something specific to a classroom and we need to reach out with an accommodation, an educational accommodation letter, that we only discuss the accommodations. What are those services that will help offset, like John said before, that brings them to the same playing field as everybody else? And so it's that equitable piece, that's what we're doing. And so it is, you know, part of just allowing them to have this reassurance that, you know, please allow us to help you. And again, it is not documented in any way that it ends up on a transcript or anything of that nature. So again, that sometimes is helpful too when faculty are talking to students and encourage them to come, you know, please, like you know, a person walked Emma down to me to introduce, you know, and we find that a lot. Our faculty are wonderful at saying, I'll go with you.
Yes.
Because that's that personal piece that students then okay, I'll go.
And I give a shout out to all of our staff at PennWest. Many of them do the same thing, so big thank you to them. Ikeya, some ways students should respond if they have a friend or classmate disclosing mental health worries, in your opinion?
The first things that we have to remember is that as much as we want to help them get through it, that we can't take on the burden of where they are, but we can take on the ability to advocate for them and support. And so a lot of times when I'm working with youth and adolescents in this space, because even as someone mentioned, you mentioned, I believe it was you about, there's a lot of need now
Yes.
around mental health. Yes. And yes, there's a lot of need around mental health. And so what we're finding is that a lot of our youth and adolescents, you know, from elementary to college age are navigating things by themselves within their own youth nucleus and not really including caring adults. And so from the college, from a position of college students, the first thing is understanding, you know, your capacity and your ability of like where your limit is and where you can help. And that takes some honesty, that takes some soul searching, so that, you know, you can really help your friend. Another thing, even in doing it before getting to helping your friend, is make sure that you are prioritizing your own mental health. Because self-care is a pivotal part with us being able to help someone else. So advocating for your wellness, your recovery, your healing, and doing that work and getting the therapy or counseling that you personally need. And now, how to respond to a friend is definitely, as we mentioned, listening, you know, active listening, being an ear, and listening out for warning signs, certain warning signs, like self-harm. So for instance, suicidal ideation looks like a few different things. So there's passive suicidal ideation, and then there's active suicidal ideation. So suicidal ideation is the thought of self-harm, just in a simple term. But passive suicidal ideation is a thought like, you know, if I don't wake up tomorrow, it's okay. Or if I get hit by a car tomorrow and not make it, it's all right. Or any thought that may be fatal, but there's contentment with that. So if you hear a friend talking with passive suicidal ideation thoughts, that's a red flag. And that's something that needs immediate help. And of course there's active suicidal ideation where there's a thought or a plan. So those are severe cases of mental health. I just wanted to put that out there because there's not always a clear distinction with what suicidal ideation looks like and when it becomes alarming. There are resources. Immediately, if you have someone who's dealing with that, or if you're dealing with that, there's 988. So you can get on the phone right then and there and say, hey, let's make this call. And let's see what, you know, how we can de-escalate this right now. Okay. And even as we're hearing, like walking a friend to the help or support that they need. So if it's in the school, walking them straight to the counselor, asking, is it okay if we go see someone? I'll walk with you. I'm here with you. That's for one of those more serious cases. And someone dealing with mental health, you know, depression or anxiety, and it's less intense or less critical or in crisis, I would definitely say, you know, checking in on them, helping them, you know, think about what things will help them come to a recovery. So asking the right questions is so important because a lot of times we don't know what to say, and that's okay. But I like to say everybody is an expert of their own lived experience. So as a friend, one of the first things is, what do you think you need right now? What is it you think I can do right now to help you? Who is it that you think you need to talk to? What do you feel like your next steps are? So those are some real practical things that we can do to help, you know, each other. And I'll say this, since there's so much need, even as you mentioned, I believe in us moving to think or shifting our thoughts with clinical and community, because clinicians are overtaxed with so much need right now. There's waiting lists for months for therapy and counseling. And so one of the ways that we can respond is understand that it's going to take a village really to address the crisis that we're in mental health. And so it's becoming educated. If a friend is dealing with depression or anxiety, find out what that means, learn a little bit about it, and begin to talk with them about, you know, that condition. And so those are a few things that I would say is ways that we can respond.
And now I'm going to turn back to the faculty for a moment, specifically Dr. Dixon. Teaching, what are some experiences where you believe a student's mental health concern was managed effectively? What went well for you, Dr. Dixon?
Yeah, I think I could give a couple of examples of what went really well. And at the root of it was always the opportunity to collaborate with our partners, either on campus, whether it was in a counseling center, working with the student to, if they had external resources and collaborate there, partner and get them connected. Sometimes I think for me, when I've worked with students and I've had a long history working in the mental health field. And so coming to the Edinburgh campus, I initially came working in the counseling center. So I had the opportunity to have an understanding of how that worked in those referrals. And so when I was teaching as a faculty member and students came to me, I think, I had the understanding about how to get them connected and how to network those resources and then advocate for them. To me, the best plan is when you're able to connect to those resources. And when students are sharing those, it could be as simple as, anxiety about being away from home, or I think it's Emily who mentioned dealing with maybe a situation within the family and feeling out of control or not having the ability to, be there or control that situation, or fearful of the unpredictability of what may happen. And that anxiety is, again, reassuring, validating those feelings and those emotions, helping them to navigate what those resources are. And so I would encourage others that, understanding what your resources are, both on campus as well as where those other partners that may exist in our community to help navigate students to be able to meet those needs. Sometimes just asking them, like, have you had services before? What's worked for you? Do you have things in place, or have you had things in place? And just, again, helping them navigate that. So what went well for me is always looking at collaborating and partnering and being able to sit down, see and hear people in the moment for what they're going through and experiences, and being able to just help them navigate that journey. And the one thing that I've always felt is important, and today we use the buzzword around trauma-informed care, but really creating a culture around, or an environment around, resilience, and sending that message that they have the ability to navigate through that with those resources and those tools. And what we don't want is the opposite of the resilience, which is the re-silencing. We don't want them being silent or pulling away or isolating because they're fearful of not getting the help they need, or the repercussions, I think, others have talked about. So what works well is being able to collaborate and support and help them navigate through those difficult times.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. And so I'm going to turn to the OSD directors again for a moment. Can you explain briefly what accommodations may look like, and maybe a few differences from an accommodation that a student might have experienced in high school as opposed to what they may receive in college level work? Sharon, do you want to start?
Sure. Most times when people think about accommodations through our office, they think educational. What can we do for the student in the classroom? How can we help a student with anxiety take a test? But we also have accommodations in housing for students with mental health issues that need to be by themselves, need to have less roommates, need to be on a certain floor, a certain room style. We also can have accommodations for students with mental health issues. And most of this particular accommodation are for students with all of the students have mental health issues, and that's emotional support animals in the campus. So those animals can help the student do exactly what they say. They offer that support for the student. The student feels like, I can go back to my room. I have my dog or my cat. It's not judging me. It's comforting me. So that has been an accommodation that has been very helpful to our students with mental health disabilities. I think the biggest difference between high school and college is high schools are geared to guarantee success and will modify the curriculum so the student can be successful. On college campuses, we want access. And we want to guarantee that access, and we want the students to be their own best advocates. And when Adrienne talked about resilience, I think that's one of the most important things we can help teach a student. I'm noticing that quality is not always present, especially in the last few years. And I think we also need to practice reciprocity. So we might not be experiencing what the students are, but we try to understand and listen and coordinate as best as we can.
Thank you, Sharon. Excellent. And I hope that this information is so helpful to our faculty who are listening to this or will be listening to this on demand. We encourage as a commission, any faculty member who has questions to please reach out to Ron at Clarion, Sharon at Edinburgh, or John at California. If you have any questions about accommodations that they might have, a student might have had in high school as opposed to what they can or cannot absolutely get here at the collegiate level. At this time, Ikeya, is there a theme or action you want our panel and students to take away from this discussion? And if so, what would that be?
I'm thinking of all the things that was mentioned, and I really would say that community and collaboration is so important in this, and really healing adolescents and youth. And so what I would say is, remember that everyone's going through something at some point. You know, at some point, we know what it feels like to need assistance or to reach out. And so let us make space, make room for that. Let's normalize that. Let's create systems of care for one another. Let us be beacon of light and hope and support wherever we go with having these conversations, because it doesn't have to take a panel. It doesn't have to take a classroom. It can be while we're walking down the street on campus. It can be while we're sitting in the cafeteria, but realize there's always an opportunity to extend healing and to listen and to support. And I would say that the more that we do that, the more that we will feel comfortable coming forward and talking about these things, and we will see change that way. And I love the word resilience. Is, you know, the great news is that no matter what condition a person has been diagnosed with, 75% of those who experience recovery or receive recovery options do recover. And however that's defined in their space. And so there's always hope, no matter what situation a person is in. So remembering that and championing that as we do it together.
I'll just stay with you again for another moment, Ikeya. Can you just real briefly explain how anyone can get a hold of NAMI for your services?
Yes, so we are a national organization, so you could check NAMI out nationally at NAMI.org. I represent the NAMI Keystone office, which is the Pennsylvania state organization. So essentially what that means is our office here right out of Pittsburgh, or right out of California in Pittsburgh, we actually take care of the entire state of PA. So if anybody in PA wants to be connected to resources from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia, our office, NAMI Keystone, can help you. So that website is NAMIKeystonePA.org. And we offer trainings. All of our services are free. We offer resources, and we also do events.
Excellent, Ikeya. Thank you so much for that information. At this point, I want to go once more back to Clarion, and specifically Emma. Takeaways that any information that if you had to go back at any point in your career here at Clarion, PennWest, any advice that you could give to our support staff and our faculty to help other students with?
I don't think so. I think they were very good at being very prompt and moving forward, making sure that my mental health was okay, which I appreciated, and probably look back and be grateful even looking in 20 years.
This time I'm going to open it up for questions. Are there any questions from, and I cannot see the groups at any of the campuses. If anybody has any questions, Frank or Sharon, if you can vocalize what the questions are, if they have any, please.
So we have a new 988 number. So what exactly happens if you call that number? What services do they provide?
So it can be a number of things. So one thing is just talking on the phone, sort of as a warm line hotline for de-escalating. But then also there is the opportunity for someone from various crisis centers, should I say, to come actually on site with you at that moment to also help de-escalate. There's options even for minors to find placement for them in facilities that might help them if they're in danger. So there's so many different resources, and some are still being developed because 988 is just about 3 years old now. And so yeah, but if you call, the great thing is they can refer you to anybody or anything that is connected to that need at that moment.
So if I have a student in my office in crisis, I could get on the phone and call 988 with that
Yes.
student and be connected to resources.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions at the other sites? I do have one question in the chat is, but hearing that reassurance on being allowed to struggle with mental health issues and still being a helper therapist, that both can be true and extremely helpful. So I just wanted everybody to see that comment. At this point, any parting comments from any of the faculty, Frank, from counseling, from any of the OSD directors?
I think the one thing that's sticking out, I'm glad you mentioned collaboration, right? And there's one thing that you said, I think a theme that we see in the counseling center is, since we're all sort of on the same page that there's a high need for this and wanting to support one another, is I'm so glad that you said, like, make sure you're okay before you start offering a lot of support. And I feel like going back to that first theme of guilt, there's a lot of clients come in and say, like, well, I don't know if I'm helping enough. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. And kind of trying to take the onus on of, like, okay, how can I provide the best support possible? When generally it's kind of like what we're saying, it's being present, being simple, being practical. And so I'm just, if I could reinforce that theme that you mentioned of, like, look, you know your limits. It's okay to say, like, I need a minute right now, but it's also okay to reach out and take that community approach when you're comfortable. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you. And can I piggyback what Frank said?
Yes.
That's so important that you mentioned that, because I do believe that when we talk about things around mental health, it is natural to want like a really extensive and kind of like deep answer, but like the research shows that it's the simple things that we need the most. We just need connection. We need to be seen, felt, heard, and really valued. And so the more that we just lean into like the difficult thing, because a lot of times for that person to be seen, it causes us to maybe lean into a difficult position, and that's where I would just say, like, it's really simple. It's really simple. Sometimes it's just like, I really don't know what to say, but I'm so here for you and I love you so much. And we're gonna get through this. Like, what can I do right now? And since I don't know, let's go talk to someone else. And I love how she said collaboration. I'm sorry, I don't know the name of Madam from the other school. But that is so important, like even as Frank brought it back up, collaboration, us doing it together and knowing that we just need each other. I just want to say that. And don't be afraid of the hard conversations. Don't be afraid of vulnerability, because vulnerability is where we heal. Is when we're willing to say, I don't know, but I'm here. And I've just seen so much great things happen from that place. So I'm an advocate of the simple. I'm an advocate of keep it simple and keep it true.
Right.
Be authentic, and it gets better.
I'd like to add something as well. I try and work with and provide a lot of clinical supervision to young clinicians and or clinicians that are just starting in the field to get licensed. And so often there's a preoccupation with doing therapy and what that means. Please remember that you're meeting with someone for 50 to 60 minutes, and they may open up and have quite a bit, even spill out all over the floor on an emotional level. We don't have to do a lot. I'll start with being present. That is a powerful thing. 80% of our work should be listening, and we don't have to reconstruct the family, or we don't have to do psychodrama or empty chair right away. We don't have to do any of that stuff. Get to know your clients or patients, whatever terminology you want to use, and help them know that you care about them. First thing out of your mouth should be, what can we do so that your life can be good? I want your life to be good. And it's important to say that, because we can have a vast array of clinical interventions and skill. And if that client doesn't believe you care about them, forget about it. It's not going to work. They have to believe you care. And care. You know what I mean? You have to care. And this is a work of giving in many respects. And it's funny because those of us, as mentioned before, those of us that go into the field have very often had our own struggle and have had to work through our own struggle. Have been referred to wounded healers and things like that. And yeah, it's in many ways very beneficial that we've had those experiences. And sometimes using a little self-disclosure can help that when working with a client. And also tell them, it would have been great if I didn't have to go through those things to get where I am. And so there's so often people become jealous, focus on extrinsic, focus on the things outside them, and devaluate themselves. And I try and encourage folks that it's that type of comparison, and we've heard this before, that is the robber of joy. And trying to allow people to get to a place where they have some self-worth, self-value, okayness with themselves is really a powerful thing too. And a lot of our work starts there.
Yes, it does, John. Thank you so much.
And put candy in your eyes.
Brandon, do you have a last final comment?
So I just wanted to say to my fellow faculty, if you're out there, there are students that we see 3 hours a week, right? That's all we get to see basically of their lives. And I think it can be hard to remember that students talk, right? If you're an easy professor, students tell each other. If you're a hard professor, students tell each other. And similarly, that extends to if you are a safe person, someone that they feel like they can tell things, you're not going to judge them, they can just show up in your office anytime and you will be there for them, they're going to talk about that as well. And then that starts to build that community of places that they can be, places that they feel safe and comfortable.
Excellent point. Excellent point. We can all be that, staff, faculty, students. So I want to wrap up this evening. I obviously want to say the 3 words that I heard the most was resilience, access, and hope. So those are three strong words that we come away with this evening. I want to thank the faculty members for being here. Thank you so much. Dr. Dixon, Dr. Regeth, and Dr. Packard, thank you so much for being here this evening. It meant so much. Ron, Sharon, and John, thank you so much for everything you do every day to support our students and faculty and staff. Frank, thank you so much for representing the counseling centers in all three PennWest campuses this evening. And finally, Ikeya, thank you so much for being here from NAMI. And we will be in touch. And I want to give a preview of what's coming in the spring. Our commission is going to do breakout sessions in the spring, and we're going to actually have a physical NAMI representative on each of the three campuses as a panel discussion to unpack and go further from what we unveiled tonight. So be aware of that. We'll be talking about that to the faculty and the staff when we look forward to continuing these important discussions in the spring semester. And I have to ask, is Shalita there at California this evening? Okay, I want to give a shout out to Shalita. As everyone knows, she is our Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and we want to thank her for everything she does for the commissions. So with that, I wish you a good evening. Thank you for your patience as we work through the technical issues in the beginning, and we look forward to speaking with you again in the spring. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Numbers of who is in California and Edinburgh in the audience.
I love it.